don't know what mental chaos shows up in the child population when they are hungry. I know some adults will, if somebody's in the same room with them and they are hungry and they don't want to admit it, they will take those emotions that they feel in their body and just become so overwhelmed that they'll start to strike out at another person. But I don't know about the kids. Kids,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
seems, from what you've said, are a bit different than adults. So how do kids handle mental chaos that can come up when they're hungry?
I would say the things I would notice in kids, they are more quick to have low blood sugar from being hungry, and they are less adapted for sure at regulating those emotions. And so they often behave distracted, they are angry, they are grumpy, they are moody, they seem very dysregulated. And it's interesting that you would mention that because another thing that I notice a lot in my profession is those often also are the kids that are labeled with, I wonder if this child has ADHD. I wonder if they have some mental health diagnosis or problem. Do they have oppositional defiant disorder? And oftentimes, I think, have we thought about how this kid is eating? Are they eating a whole lot of sugar and really like quick processed food that doesn't stay with them for a long time and create sustainable mood and energy? And if so, let's start there because I would be distracted too if I only had either nothing or if I only had some sort of refined processed carbohydrate for breakfast with nothing else. Then by 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., I would feel tired and moody and like I couldn't focus as well. So I think that kids really do show that chaos that you're talking about,
Mm.
and they show it without reservation. I think sometimes adults try and keep it together, but when kids are hungry or tired, they behave badly, whether they're in front of me in my office or whether they're with their parent or whether they're at school. And I think sometimes adults try and keep it together until they sort of keep their chaos together, like when they're at work. And then they go in their car and sort of like have their breakdown, or they go and find something to eat, or, when they're in my office or your office, they
Mhm.
try and keep themselves more regulated.
Yeah, that's a good point because kids haven't learned how to regulate emotions as well as adults have. And so it's almost more dangerous to be an adult with these sorts of issues because then you keep it together until you can't. And then it
Yeah,
just goes overboard. Like you said, right when I hit my car after work, that's
right.
when it all just goes to pieces. I just want to know if blood sugar really does have an effect on your mood.
Blood sugar absolutely has an effect on your mood. That's one of the key things about what makes someone hangry. And when we say that, what we mean is when somebody's blood sugar is balanced, they feel like life is okay and everything's okay, and I can handle the life tasks at hand, whether that's the emails, whether it's my job responsibility, whether it's my relationship, my kids, my family. I feel like I have it all together and I can and keep these things balanced. When my blood sugar is either too high or too low, I do not feel that way in my life. So if my blood sugar is too low, that would be I haven't eaten, or another way that you can have too low of blood sugar is I've overeaten sugars or carbs, and now I'm in a residual reactive low afterward.
Mm.
So that's the picture I draw in the office is you can eat an abundance of food. I don't know if probably people can relate to an experience, and I have this as well. If I go have a meal for lunch that happens to have a lot of rice or a lot of pasta, so Mexican food or a Chinese food meal where I might eat more than I normally do, but I also eat more carbohydrate content than I normally do. I will come back to my office after lunch and feel like I'm having trouble staying awake because I'm getting sleepy, because my blood sugar now went way up with the abundance of food and then it drops afterward. So within an hour or two afterward, I feel like really low. And the signs and symptoms of low blood sugar are things like I feel tired, I feel restless, I feel like I have to fidget around in my chair. I feel like I want a cup of coffee. I might even feel like I want some more carbohydrate to lift me back up into a normal blood sugar state.
I never knew that, actually. I have experienced that, certainly, but I never had attributed it to blood sugar. Falling asleep in a session is not something that I want to do. And that has
No.
definitely happened to where it's like, I think I need a cup of tea or something. So I notice it in my body for sure.
Let's say I have 5 cookies. I'm going to have a dip in my blood sugar that is 5 cookies deep until it can re
Mm.
regulate. Whereas if I have 2 cookies, my dip is going to be much smaller.
I would love to see that visual. I know you're very much into visuals. This is probably driving you crazy not being able to write it down and show our audience what you mean, but I like that illustration.
Yeah.
The 5 cookie dip versus the 2 cookie dip.
Yeah, or the 3 cups of rice versus 1 cup. So, one thing I tell people a lot with blood sugar regulation, I shun away from the idea of labeling foods as good and bad. I don't think that's helpful to people. I don't think we should say cookies are bad, rice is bad. It's really, for me, it's not about good and bad. What it is about, however, is proper balance and regulation. So, if I go out to Chinese food, for example, I don't deem that rice is bad for me.
Mhm.
But what I do know is a certain portion of rice, well, I can stay in okay balance the rest of the day. Too big of a portion, so a 3 scoop of rice meal versus a 1 scoop is going to have a much different impact on my ability to stay in good blood sugar regulation. And the way I talk about it with people is we wake the monsters up, which is interesting with this idea of hangry. So when I get too low of blood sugar, or consequently too high of blood sugar, I feel out of balance. And then my moods are out of balance. So I'm either too sleepy when I'm low, or I get super angry or irritable when I get too high. So those are both mood states, obviously, that you would identify as being hangry, and also probably in lieu of what you talk about, you would feel chaotic in those states. You'd feel like out of your balance and out of your zone. And I talk about it like you would be waking the monsters up. And the monsters are all those emotions that we're trying to keep sort of in check when we're regulated to feel good.
And this is where I think mindfulness does come in. And what you described about the rice and knowing what works well with your system is, I guess, maybe not true for all of us. We all have different systems, right? So we all need to sort of be mindful about what works with our own systems. You have told me that you have noticed what works well with your system. It may be that mine works differently, but it does involve being mindful.
Yes, absolutely.